This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
Tips for winning your bracket contest and why this is the year the Wolverines will win it all. Next on this week's episode of Michigan Podcast.
But there's going to be one team that's going to play solely as a team. No man is more important than the team. No coach is more important than the team. The team, the team, the team.
Looks deep for Anthony Clark. Waits for it. Hit. Caught.
They said you can't do Ohio State. Now what?
Brady gets terrific. Throws it. Get it. Touchdown. Knight again. Schultz just before Brazil got him. And a leaping interception by Woodson.
Harbaugh back to throw over the middle. Caught by Collier at the 5 on his feet. Touchdown, Michigan. On its way. It's good.
He's 5'7", 179 pounds, a junior at Michigan. But Jamie Morris packs a wallop, and he delivers for Bo Schembechler.
And here's your first play. Pressure coming. Sack. It is Glenn Steele, number 81, who fought his way through the traffic.
Option. And Robinson calls his own number, and he's going to score. Oh, an easy touchdown for Robinson and Michigan.
We're going to win the championship again because we're going to play as a team. And when we play as a team and the old season is over, you and I know it's going to be Michigan again. Michigan.
Blue, I'm Steve Deace, and the second most wonderful time of the year is here. March Madness now looms. And next segment, we're going to give you our annual tips for winning your bracket, which were gangbusters last year. You know, it took a bit of a dip for a couple years there. The COVID guys playing 6th, 7th years, kind of broke some of those trends. But now that we're kind of getting back to some form of normalcy, it's hard to do that in today's college sports, but some form of roster consistency, the trends came rearing back for a big year last year. We'll see if we keep it going for you for this year. But we're going to do that in the next segment. But let's start off with why this is the year the Wolverines are going to win it all. And it starts with defense. This is the number one defensive team in the country, and defense is what wins championships. I love the way, though, that the Purdue loss happened on Sunday. I love the timing of it. I go back to something I remember hearing when I was a kid from Nolan Richardson coaching those legendary 40 Minutes of Hell Arkansas teams back in the day with Corliss Williamson and Lee Mayberry and those guys. And they played in the SEC championship, man, and got absolutely housed. And Richardson was like, you know what? We needed that. We just needed, we had won too many games in a row. We needed a reset, take the pressure off, get that chip back on the shoulder, that eye of the tiger. And that Arkansas team went on and won the national championship and nearly won it again the next year as well. Got all the way to the final before losing to UCLA. And so I like the fact that Michigan got that reset loss. I mean, Michigan's had 3 losses this year. And after the previous 2, they went on a tear. Both times, after the Wisconsin loss and then after the Duke loss. Now, they weren't always great. They weren't always dominant. But I mean, guys, the other team's on scholarship too. Hearing some of these analysts and handicappers that I follow, like, I don't know, man, I'm kind of down on Michigan. I mean, they only blew out Penn State in their last 6 games. You see who Michigan played in its last 6 games? I mean, that was Michigan's last 6 games was the most ridiculous closing stretch I've ever seen Michigan basketball ever face. All right. And in there, they won by double digits at Illinois, won the Big Ten championship, beat Michigan State on the last day of the regular season when Michigan State was shooting as hot as it possibly can and still put up 90 points on a Tom Izzo defense in March. So, no, I'm not concerned at all. I even like the way we lost that game. I think if it had been fluky, Purdue hits like 15 threes like Wisconsin did, maybe you kind of lie to yourself and just say, it's an outlier. No, Purdue beat us. That's the best any team has looked against Michigan basketball for 40 minutes this year. They pretty much were the better team from the jump. And Michigan didn't really play its game the entire weekend in Chicago. Still got to the conference championship game. I don't think even played a good half of basketball by the lofty standards we've seen from this team. And so I think, again, it's good to get punched in the mouth every now and then to kind of reset things, remind everybody, hey, your stuff doesn't stink here. Okay. You defecate just like the rest of us. Okay. You're put on your jerseys and shorts just like the rest of us do. And I think Michigan got that reminder. I think you saw things that are not typical. You saw Adai Mara get beat at the basket several times by the Boilermakers, particularly TKR. You saw Morez Johnson kind of get emasculated, frankly, that entire game. He got bullied around. These are not things you typically see, and they're the kinds of things you see when you win your league by 4 games and you're playing a proud program that you kind of embarrassed on their home floor, and they want to get some of their manhood back and some of that respect back. Purdue got every loose ball, every 50-50 play went their way. They absolutely deserved to win. No fluke at all. They were the better team. For that weekend in Chicago, they reminded everybody why they were the preseason number 1 team. And I'm glad that it came at Michigan's expense, because that's a lesson you learn now as a team. And I think you're going to see Michigan regroup, recalibrate, and I think you're going to see them storm through that Midwest Regional. I don't see a team that, if Michigan plays its B game, is going to beat us. I don't think Alabama has the horses inside, plays enough defense. Now their point guard might be in trouble for getting busted for a pound of pot. Is that a lot? For a commodity traded in ounces, a pound of pot. Yeah, it sounds a little bit like the kind of stash you'd have if you were dealing, allegedly. Okay, so who knows if he's even going to play, but I didn't like Alabama to even get past Akron and into the Sweet 16 anyway, out of that bracket. I think Iowa State is a lot like Illinois. It's got bigs, but bigs who shoot and are versatile. It's not really a pound you at the rim kind of a team. They're not a good free throw shooting team. They're way nastier on defense than Illinois. They're not quite as dynamic on offense, though. But again, with that home crowd there in Detroit, I would expect Michigan to be a solid favorite to win there. So it's hard to ever say in a sport that determines its champion by single elimination, it's hard to ever say natty or bust. In fact, unless you're on like a really historic run, UNLV undefeated back in the day, Kentucky undefeated about a decade ago. Unless you're on that kind of a run, you're never natty or bust. But I do think for this Michigan team, it's Final Four or bust. And I think they do have the most favorable draw of any number 1 seed. If you look at the rest of their bracket, I think Duke is the number 1 overall seed, easily has the toughest bracket of all the number 1 seeds. So I like the fact that Michigan got punched in the mouth, got humbled a little bit, got reminded that they are human. They might be superhuman, but they're not invincible. And they are mortal after all. And so I think it was good to get that reminder and get that chip on the shoulder, have people doubting you again after this great historic run you've been on of dominance for the last 3 months through the Big Ten. And get refocused, get recentered, get that eye of the tiger back. And I think you're going to see that from Michigan now as it goes on and wins the national championship. And now, hopefully, some free money. Our annual segment giving you the tips it takes to win your bracket. And these have been tried and true for a long time. They did take a bit of a dip a couple of years post-COVID with all the guys that were playing until they were like 30 years old with all the exemptions and everything. But last year, these trends came roaring back to assert themselves. So let's keep this momentum going. Let's kick this off. All right. First thing you need to know before filling out your bracket is that the team ranked in the field highest in Ken Pomeroy's luck factor has lost its first game in the NCAA tournament 19 of the last 22 years. And this year, that team is Long Island University, a 16 seed. So you're probably looking at 20 out of 23 years. Number 2, no team that lost its first game in its conference tournament has ever gone on to win the NCAA tournament. So this year, eliminate these 11 teams from winning it all in your bracket. In alphabetical order: Alabama, Georgia, Illinois, Michigan State, Missouri, Nebraska, North Carolina, Texas, Texas A&M, Texas Tech, and Villanova. Those 11 teams in this field all lost their first game of their conference tournament, so they're not winning the NCAA tournament based on decades of precedent and tradition. Third, all but one national champion since 2002 finished ranked in the top 25 of both of KenPom's offensive and defensive efficiency ratings. This year, that is these 8 teams heading into the tournament. Again, alphabetical order: Arizona, Duke, Florida, Houston, Iowa State, Louisville, Michigan, and Michigan State. Now, the following 7 teams are close enough that they would likely fulfill this metric with strong tournament runs. That's Illinois, Connecticut, Gonzaga, Purdue, Texas Tech, Vanderbilt, and Virginia. Barring some special Danny and the Miracles in 1987, Villanova, 8th seed in 85, barring something like that, it is very, very, very likely that your national champion is in this graphic right here. Number 4, in the last 33 years, only 8 coaches have won it all in their first trip to the Final Four, although 4 of them have been the last 6 national champions. So if this thing gets blown up again this year, we'll get rid of this trend for next year. But if the 8 coaches whose teams already meet the aforementioned KenPom threshold, 3 of these coaches have never been to the Final Four before. That's Pat Kelsey at Louisville, Tommy Lloyd at Arizona, and TJ Otzelberger at Iowa State. 5, 31 of the last 40 teams, so 78%, to make the Final Four were in the top 25 of KenPom's defensive efficiency ratings at the start of the tournament. This year, that is these 19 teams. And again, these are all going to be in alpha order, okay? Arizona, Duke, Clemson, except I don't have Duke in alpha order. Arizona, Duke, Clemson, Connecticut, Florida, Gonzaga, Houston, Iowa State, Kansas, Louisville, Michigan, Michigan State, Nebraska, Northern Iowa, St. John's, St. Mary's, TCU, Tennessee, and Virginia. History says at least 3 of the eventual Final Four teams are on this list I just gave you right there. Number 6, in the last 10 years, 17 of the 20 teams, that's 85%. 17 of the 20 teams to make it to the national championship game ranked in the top 6 of the offensive efficiency rate metrics at Bart Torvik's analytics site from February 1st through the end of the conference tournaments. This is one of the more unknown trends, and for the last decade, it has been cash money. This year, that is these 5 teams: Duke, Illinois, Purdue, UCLA, and Wisconsin. Those were the teams that finished in the top 6 of Bart Torvik's offensive efficiency from February 1st through the end of the conference tournaments. Chances are at least one of the teams to make the national championship game is on that list. Number 7. Since KenPom began real-time stats in 2002, only 3% of the teams to make the Final Four ranked in the top 10 of either KenPom's offensive or defensive efficiency, but then outside the top 50 in the other heading into the tournament. So this year, fade these 4 teams from getting that far: Alabama, BYU, Kansas, and Nebraska. History says none of those teams are making it to the Final Four. Number 8, no team west of the Central Time Zone has won the NCAA tournament since Arizona in 1997. That's the year I got married. Number 9. Now we get into individual rounds. All right, here are some trends for the round of 64. 16 seeds all time are just 2 and 158. 15 seeds all time are just 11 and 149. So, but pick at least one 13 or 14 seed to win, because at least one of them has done that a little more than 20% of the time, or on average once a tournament. 12 seeds have won at least one game 31 of the last 36 years. 9 seeds are almost exactly 500 all time against 8 seeds. For the round of 32, pick all the number 1 seeds to advance to the Sweet 16, which they do over 90% of the time historically. Pick at least one double-digit seed to make it to the Sweet 16, which has happened in 38 of the last 40 years. Now to the Sweet 16. Advance exactly 3 number 1 seeds to the Elite 8, because all time number 1 seeds make it that far about 70% of the time. And advance no team seeded lower than 11th because all time only 3 of the 328 teams ever to make it to the Elite Eight were seeded that low. That's 0.9%. For the Elite Eight, advance either 1 or 2 number 1 seeds because 31 of the last 40 Final Fours, that's 78%, had exactly that many number 1 seeds. Advance no double-digit seeds to the Final Four because all time since seeding began, only 7 of the 184 Final Four teams, that's 3.8%, were seeded lower than 9th. Now as we get to the Final Four, advance no team seeded lower than 6th because only 3 teams in the last 39 years, or 7.6% of the time, has there been a national championship game with a team seeded lower than that. Number 1 seeds have squared off for the national title only 11 times ever, but 8 of those meetings have occurred in just the last 20 years, including last year. So keep an eye on that. 36 of the last 37 national champions, that's 97%, were seeded 4th or higher. 7 of the last 11 national champions were at-large teams. In fact, in the last decade, only about a third of teams that won their conference tournament went on to the Final Four. So 7 of the last 11 national champions there, at-large teams, did not win their conference tournament. Now, obviously, one caveat here, no one trend should be singled out except for maybe the very first, or one of the very first ones on the conference tournament, since that's an all-timer. So that means kind of what you're looking for are teams that check multiple boxes to either fade or follow. Hopefully those tips will help you to win some money again this year in your bracket challenge. We'll come back. We'll wrap things up here in a moment. This week's X-Poll results, we asked you how far does Michigan go in the NCAA tournament? 42% of you agree with me, national championship. 36% of you say Final Four. 14% said Elite Eight. 8% said Sweet 16. And that brings us to our feedback of the week from Joe, J-O. He says, before the LJ Kaysen injury, it felt like a Final Four lock, but now I'm not quite as confident. Without him, they still beat 4 tournament teams, so I still expect them to make the Elite Eight, and I would be very happy with the Final Four. So I think the LJ Kaysen thing has kind of been misunderstood. It's kind of become like this panacea answer. First of all, LJ Kaysen was not a good point guard. He led the team in turnover rate. The reason why he was valuable, though, is because he was the most effective dribble drive player on the roster. In many respects, LJ Kaysen is a better version of Roddy Gale. He's a very good defensive player. He's very good on the dribble drive. Those are the 2 strengths of Gale. Now, he's not quite as good of a defensive player as Roddy. He's way better at finishing on the dribble drive than Roddy. Way better of a 3-point shooter than Roddy. So what you're doing is essentially, because they're basically the same player, which is why as Kaysen was asserting himself as the year went on, Gale was playing less. And that's why with Kaysen not available, Roddy is playing more. Essentially, they're the same player. Kaysen's just a better, more dynamic version. They both turn the ball over too much. They're both not point guards, but they are both, when they're at their best, the best dribble driver on the team. They're both good defensive players. Gale is better, and Kaysen is the way better shooter. And so, John Beilein used to always talk about outliers, and Roddy Gale for Michigan to win it all, particularly as a senior, Roddy Gale's got to be that outlier. It doesn't mean he's got to be like he was in the Iowa game. He basically won that game. Doesn't even have to be as good as he was in the Michigan State game. I mean, he was fantastic coming off the bench. But he's got to be way better than he was in this tournament. Too many turnovers, the slightest amount of contact. He can't hold on to the ball. He's got to be more consistent than we saw in the Big Ten tournament for sure. And if he is, then there's not really another place to attack Michigan as a team. And that's why I think we're going to win the national championship. But what do you think? Let us know here in the comments section, whether you're watching on YouTube or listening on iTunes, Apple. You can also like, rate, subscribe, share, 5-star review. All of those things help us to find more Michigan fans just like you. Thank you for all of those things. We appreciate them all. Don't forget to follow us in between episodes at Michigan Podcast on X. That's at Michigan Podcast on X. Until the next time, let the madness begin. I'm Steve Deace. Go Blue.